I cannot help from feeling that we are on the edge of losing all that we've become accustomed to. Everything seems so fragile and yet is constantly taken for granted as we carry on with our busy lives, blinded by the immediate. As a child, I remember our waste management providers giving our family various buckets to sort paper, cardboard, tin, and aluminium, and only the special plastic with the special number stamped on it. Beside the sink is where our family's rubbish collected until there was no more counter space. Frustrated with their 4 children's lack of responsibility, my mother would take it to the overflowing buckets in the garage, where she would often forget it. Then finally, my father would get annoyed that his tools were buried and secretly, or not so secretly, would bin the waste so it never actually made our suburban curb for collection. This was our part. As I've grown older, I've become very conscious of our fragile world. But I've never thought of myself as a conservationist, a radical tree hugger, and I've definitely never chased the rogue whaling ship, as I've never been to sea. But somehow, after a couple of drinks in San Francisco with a very passionate friend, I find myself in a humid port in Brazil, about to sail to South Africa as part of the 5 Gyres Institute's expedition through the South Atlantic Gyre, documenting plastic pollution for the first time.
And prepare supper for 1800, and then 1800 to 22 is wash up after supper, and 22 to 02 you can just sit and drink tea. Okay, with regard to watches, if you can be on time, be vigilant, keep the log, which is the logbook we have to write, and stay awake. Steve, if you want to take care of doing the anchor and get a couple of people to help you.
With an overwhelming curiosity, I am now part of this precarious group of inspired strangers, led by scientist Dr. Marcus Erickson and his wife and 5 Gyres co-founder, Anna Cummings.
We're gonna head out now, okay? We're all ready to go.
Next step, Africa.
With fresh eyes and different networks, we were brought together, put simply, to help alert the world.
What we're doing with 5 Gyres and with Algalita is simply looking at the distribution of plastic. I mean, we take a manta trawl, we skim the surface of the ocean, we count pieces of plastic in a lab, and we share the results.
The goal for trawling is every 50 nautical miles from now until the time we get to South Africa. In between those times, we'll deploy the high-speed trawl.
It's a relatively new issue, this idea of plastic marine pollution. Any sailor or Navy man who was sailing for the Gyre would have seen this plastic in the last maybe 30, 40 years. But it wasn't until Captain Moore came upon this area between Hawaii and California full of plastic trash in an area where sailors don't traditionally go. When you first pull up some of these samples, as you'll see, it may not look like a lot of plastic. You might find less than a handful, sometimes only a few fragments. Sometimes it might take taking these samples back to the lab to see if there's any plastic at all. But what's really interesting to think is, here we are in the middle of nowhere. We're going to be thousands of miles from the nearest landmass, and still we're going to find evidence of our plastic footprint.
And I want to remind everyone that this is our research mission. So I invite you all to embrace what we're up to wholeheartedly, get involved. We need your help to accomplish our mission.
The philosophy that there is an away, that, you know, we say we throw something away, that you can create something to be used for a minute that lasts forever, is evil, in my opinion. What I think needs to happen with companies that produce plastic is in the whole scope of the product's impact, they need to calculate for its environmental impact economically.
Ooh!
This was the Manta, not the high speed, so this is actually a research sample.
It's the sea state coming down, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty calm. It was about a 2 or 3 today.
There's a nurdle!
Yeah.
We have nurdle!
There looks like a piece of some sort of film packaging.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Hard to see against the spoon.
Today I was introduced to a nurdle. It might as well have been a beanbag pellet, only it was a tiny piece of virgin plastic that was found hundreds of miles offshore. Given its seemingly insignificant size, how can Marcus be so dedicated?
I got interested in this topic a long time ago when I was young, just in terms of trash, debris, and plastic. And then as I got into my undergraduate and I was living in a coastal community, I started reading up about marine debris in the ocean, and I stumbled across Algalita, which included Marcus Erickson and Anna Cummins, and I started reading about the issue and got super interested and applied for graduate school. Specifically, what I study is the chemical component or the toxicity of plastic debris to organisms. So I research the chemicals in the plastic debris either through manufacturing or that adsorb onto the debris in the ocean, and so how that affects the animals in terms of does it transfer to their tissue, and then if so, are there toxic effects because of that?
Chelsea's work is extremely important. What she's shown in a lab already is that pollutants will jump from plastic to fish tissue. As bigger fish eat the smaller fish, it biomagnifies up the food chain.
Awesome!
So the routine begins. Day and night, wind and waves, trawl in, trawl out. Our staggered shifts never quite set. 3 groups rotating 24 hours a day. A dinner shift previous means a 4-hour watch starts sharp at 2 a.m. in a cold night.
Let's see what's in the high speed.
Ooh! It's perfect for Chelsea's toxicity analysis. Can I see? Okay.
You get to know the ocean and you find a spoon.
Is that what that is? Whatever it is, it's been in there for a long time.
Woo! For me, I've grown up in the ocean. The ocean has been my second home. I've been surfing for 15 years all over the world, diving, sailing on the ocean, and in a way the ocean is sick because of pollution, and we really don't know what the extent of the problem is and what kind of damage this is going to take in the long term.
It's been proven that these pollutants, PCBs, DDT, other hydrophobic pollutants, stick to plastic. It's also been shown that pollutants will desorb from the plastic into the tissues of animals. They eat it, and the pollutants pass from the plastic into their organs. They're attracted to fats, so there's a perfect synergy for the pollutants to pass from the plastic into the organs of the animals. And Chelsea's now working on the next step, which is when fish in the open ocean eat plastic, do those pollutants desorb into their tissues?
Beautiful. Yeah!
It's a big fat sushi.
I did a really controlled study in the lab of dietary exposure of plastic. So I fed them plastic that had been in the ocean for 3 months and then plastic just straight from the factory. And we found that they did actually eat the plastic. We looked for toxic effects, so we found some interesting stuff with them where they were losing weight. Some of them looked like it appeared to be anemic. We found some single-cell necrosis in their liver and different problems with their thyroids, and so still working on a lot of that data. But the persistent organic pollutants that we look for in plastics that we're talking about, they definitely have what we call endocrine disrupting effects, which are problems with reproduction. So your endocrine system is what controls all the hormones in your body. And so some of these persistent organic pollutants basically mimic our natural hormones and then disrupt our normal reproductive system.
I maybe thought that we use too much stuff because I was geared towards thinking about consumerism, but the idea of plastic never crossed my mind. I used plastic bags at the market. You know, I used disposable coffee cups. It didn't cross my consciousness.
Well, I started years ago as a kid sailing dinghies and always had an interest in the sea and ships and boats, and just seeing larger chunks sailing and occasionally come across a patch of trash and shit, that's not very good, but you don't realise all the little bits and they're breaking down that it's there like on the whole.
So I got interested in this issue because I read about Captain Charles Moore and his research that he had been doing in the North Pacific garbage patch. Now, he compared his findings to zooplankton, and his information came back that he had 6-to-1 ratio of plastic to zooplankton. Now, I don't know what the negative effects of that is, but I know that it isn't right.
I've been filled with a lot of uncertainty about the trip, about the issues, about everything. And only a few hundred miles into the 4,000-mile trek, our mainsail has completely ripped along the seams. Again, I'm not a sailor, as my constant battle to keep my lunch down proves, but I'm sure this cannot be good. The Sea Dragon's fuel tanks are only meant to carry us through the windless days of the Gyre, not the entire ocean.
So what we'll have to do, we'll just organise a towing circle. To be honest, don't worry, I mean it would have happened to me. It's an old sail that's gone along the seam.
This is my second cruise. First one I went to the North Pacific. And the North Pacific is famous for this garbage patch, or this big island of trash floating in the middle of the ocean. What I found when I came back is that people were wondering what was this island like.
In 2008, I had a chance with Captain Moore and Marcus. We had been dating for about 6 months at that point, so decided a month at sea was a great way to test our relationship. But we crossed the North Pacific Gyre from Hawaii back to Los Angeles, and I still expected to see an island of garbage the size of Texas. So this was a real eye-opener for me, seeing that the issue is really difficult to see. So that inspired Marcus and I to start the Five Gyres Institute with a goal of expanding that research on plastic in the North Pacific, which people are starting to know about, to all 5 oceans.
Everyone nowadays wants everything instantly. It's an instant society. Got to have it now, 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 now. Instant Wi-Fi, instant everything. So everyone wants their instant coffees, and no one really worries about their little plastic cups. Oh, it's only 1 cup.
Stuck on a boat, we wait with our own set of worries. Either we kill time sewing countless stitches, or we sit behind a computer just like at home. With our expedition slowed with sail repairs, we distract our busy minds with familiar old habits.
All right, hauling in number 10.
The life cycle of a piece of plastic, it starts off as these nurdles, or these virgin plastic pellets, and they mold it into, say, a plastic bottle. And then let's say the plastic bottle gets out to sea. So plastics don't biodegrade, they photodegrade, which means the light breaks them down into smaller and smaller pieces. So once it gets out into the middle of the ocean and it's floating around with the sunlight breaks it down into smaller and smaller bits.
As soon as it comes out of the river mouth or the sewage outfall pipe or whatever and goes into the ocean, it's plastic in the ocean. The gyres simply are just machines driven by weather that create a circle that collects it. Gyres are natural phenomenons.
And beyond 200 miles of most countries is international water, no man's land. I'm part of a society that does not take responsibility for its own waste.
Look at that.
Wow, that's a lot. That looks like a nurdle, and that's a nurdle right there.
I mean, they're getting more dense.
Much more colorful. Mostly white, like we usually see, but
Some blues and reds.
blue, red.
Something about the colours of plastics, like this theory, or I don't know if it's proven.
Yeah, well, certain animals can be attracted to other colors. When you look at the stomach contents of the Lysan albatross, you'll find overwhelmingly more white plastic. And it may be because they're drawn to that color because it's a food source, or it mimics a food source, or because they're foragers. They're looking for food from the surface, and what they might spot first is white. It stands out against the color of the ocean.
And anything with fish? Any correlation?
I don't know if there's been enough research yet on ingestion. Based on the ones that Charlie looked at in the North Pacific, they were mostly white. It's like a food source, and it may be more visible at night, or it may just be, it looks like a fish egg or like zooplankton. All right, process it.
We found a fridge in the Mississippi River when I was filming for Nat Geo last year. I hopped into it, and for like quarter mile just paddled in the refrigerator in the Mississippi. We saw like 7 total in that month on the river. I mean, our biggest export, I would bet, is trash. Just junk washing down our watersheds out to sea. I went to a small town in Peru, and a little small village, maybe a few hundred people, but there was a road going out onto the tide pools, and the road ended, and there was a hole in the concrete, and that was a communal dump. And you look down, and along the beach, thousands of plastic bottles, thousands of them. Near Nazca in Peru, just south of Lima.
Plastic!
There we go, that's a big chunk. Let's go get it.
Joe, do you still see it?
It's a plastic bottle too.
Before I really knew much about the 5 gyres, I knew about Marcus's junk raft. It was a suicide mission to raise awareness. A ride on a self-made boat of old plastic bottles from California to Hawaii. After 3 months, nearly sinking, running out of food and water, he crossed the Pacific. While his passion is incredibly inspiring, the few bits pulled in by our surface trawls every 60 nautical miles seems hardly worth risking one's life.
I'm on a boat. Looking for plastic trash.
Hey Dale, I'm gonna go in.
Going in, baby.
Okay, we need someone to go and get the ladder. We have one less camera, maybe a ladder. Alright. Alright, this has just got serious. No, I'm not laughing or joking.
How's the water?
It's in the forepeak. Yeah, swim back here, Marcus. You guys get ready to get him out. Let's get the main down. Are you okay?
I look at Marcus's stunt works as good for the cause. I like that he has the courage as a trained scientist to actually be an activist as well.
Where is he? I can't see him. Tell me where he is. Stand ahead. Camera boy, get a man in the water.
Kind of in shock. I didn't know what to think. To jump out and just save this one plastic bottle.
It's a team effort. It's the 2 of us. I wouldn't be his partner in these projects if I didn't believe in them.
Holy shit! That was cool.
I saw the reality of being in the water, how difficult it is to get somebody out, and just be really careful. Even when it happens again, you do just everyone be quiet, and just one person talking, i.e. me or Clive. You do what's told, okay? So it's good. Good little practice.
When your focus becomes that, exactly, just trying to educate people about this garbage that's in the middle of the ocean, and yeah, it's just one piece, and maybe one piece doesn't make a big difference, but it's just the idea of it all. To bring as much of it in as we can.
There's so many wars and conflicts and different perspectives of religious and political and right to life, right to choose, all these things that people have their own opinions about, but water connects us all.
People should stop and think a little bit more about things and not be so hypocritical, because I've been talking to people who are at Starbucks talking about plastic trash, and I can just imagine them with their one-use spoon, plastic spoon, and their plastic cup in their hand as they're talking to me about this problem. So I think there's a lot of speculation and a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon. Follow things, don't just talk about it.
Okay, so give it a push again, guys. Okay,
We successfully got the main back on! To windward! And beyond!
It's just amusing.
Wait a minute! Can we get Chelsea and you to do this in jeans?
It's just amusing.
I really want to see you guys work together on a little show.
There's one hand Maisie, one hand Cut Lady, and a chocolate coconut.
Wow.
Chocolate coconut Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers.
Oh, it's calm pie.
Cheers.
Cheers. What is it?
Cheers.
To week 1. Success. 3 to go.
So we just threw the small suitcase trawl in for 7 minutes. We had to retrieve it because it was going upside down. And also in 7 minutes, we already caught a lot of debris in this one. So it must be getting closer to the accumulation zone. Only a group of nerds like this would get so excited. Yeah, try it! Well, and it's also this mixture of like you don't want it to be there, but you're also like really excited when you find it there because that's what we're doing here. Right. Yeah, no, I know. People are almost like happy when we find a thick trawl, but then you're like, wait, no, that's not right. But
Yeah. Like I had said to Charlie once.
yeah.
Wow, that was a good one, he goes.
Yeah, a good one.
I'm not sure if I'm numb from the nausea or crazed from the dehydration that comes from throwing up day after day, but I find the storm's power mesmerizing. Whatever my expectations were, following Marcus around day and night in this rain has proven to be exhausting.
We could pull the main up. So I don't know if you could let the main sheet right out. We can pull it up and then we'll just tack and then we're off.
Start letting it out.
Right now we've got 30 knot winds and 6 to 8 foot seas. So when we're sampling the sea surface, these kinds of swells, it can cause the trawl to jump and dive, and you don't want that. You don't want to catch air in your sample as you're cruising along. It becomes kind of invalid. As long as you go really slow, like we're going now, only going like 1.5 knots. If you go slow enough, you can get a decent sample, but also this kind of sea state causes the plastic debris to churn and goes down, goes downward. So, you know, your trawl will look like there's less debris at the surface. That's not because there's less debris here. Just the rough seas are pushing it down. Like other gyres, there are sort of there's a west and east areas of concentration. All these dots here, that's where we've been so far. We're going to end up hitting all these. 31 years ago, off the coast of Cape Town, they did 9 trawls. They went out about 1,000 miles and came back. We can replicate probably half of these. Pretty cool. This is nuts.
This is nuts?
This is nuts.
I know, I'm surprised Dale is letting you do this. This is nuts that we're trawling in this.
This is like
I
trawling
don't
in the
want to lose a
hurricane.
data
Marcus
point.
is a wild man.
Don't want to lose a.
What?
Don't want to lose a data point. I mean, we had a 600-mile gap in the North Atlantic.
That's because we went through a hurricane.
Yeah, we should have kept trawling. We really have to do that study and normalize the sea state.
That'd be really
this
cool.
This will be so skewed.
James fell in. I mean, James.
What about girls?
We didn't fall in.
James fell overboard and was caught by his harness last night. Dale said it was pretty hairy.
Yeah, I believe him. Let me go back there and we're not doing bad. 3 knots.
It's still a little fast. Between 3 and 4.
with waves crashing and the storm pounding us relentlessly. Marcus's persistence to get back on schedule, despite the risk of having to scrap irregular data back at the lab, is admirable. But his determination is insane.
I got it. Ready?
I wonder what it'd be like if it were still out there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At least 8 visible pieces. 9.
What's interesting
is that a nurdle?
I don't know. Might be.
Yeah.
With this sea state, when we're not getting the small stuff, the big fragments are showing up.
Yeah.
Like they're super buoyant. So even though we've got like 40 knot winds, these are staying on the surface. But I mean, all the small stuff is probably churning down deep.
It's really easy when the weather is like this to forget why we're here. So even though it seems slightly insane that Marcus wants to continue sampling even in these conditions, every single trawl has had plastic. We're going to have a nice, even transect, and he's already excited. Ah! Oh,
Heads up. Computers away. Make it stop raining.
Yeah, actually.
Take that one place you can hang out.
But there's no way to fix this at sea. I mean, Dale said to fix this, he's going to have to literally take the whole section apart.
Should not happen.
Finally, after a week of gale force winds and rain, we awoke this morning to inviting waters. When the expedition began, this is what I dreamed about. A break from the endless flow of emails, ubiquitous advertising, and alarm clocks. But just as the cliche goes, I guess perspective is gained from contrast. The storm's violence has left a long stream of repair tape on a crucial rigging line, putting our restitched mainsail and Jody in peril.
The future can be very scary, but I like to look at it not in those terms, because if I can change one person's mind to not throw their trash onto the streets, which you see all the time, and it just comes from ignorance, they don't know any better, then there's hope.
Now, there are third world countries that have no idea that this plastic doesn't absorb into the ground. Everything that they've ever used, like banana leaves, were used for packaging to wrap things up, and of course if they threw it on the ground it would just go back into the earth. They don't have a clue that this stuff is going to be around for 400 to 1,000 years.
All of the bioplastic, PLA, polylactic acid stuff that's in the marketplace right now only biodegrades under the right conditions in landfills. It does not biodegrade in the ocean. We need a new chemical formula to make truly biodegradable products.
Whether it was purely a coincidence or justly celebrating good weather, the calm water made Thanksgiving feel like a picnic at sea. 3 weeks into the voyage, I imagined plain pastas and rice, but Dale's stocked rations and Stiv's elaborate meal so far along in the expedition has proven thoroughly impressive.
It does look suspiciously like there's a finger poke right here. I don't know.
With my stomach graciously back at ease, miles away from extravagant Turkey Day parades, there has been only one thing on my mind, and it's definitely not rerun holiday programming or a football game. Since the very beginning of the expedition, I've had this endless anticipation to see a plastic island, to swim in chunks of polyethylene, PVC, and nylon rubbish, clouding the sea, capturing the shots to shock the world. As a filmmaker, this asinine desire still exists, as tomorrow, we near the reality of a gyre.
Yards out.
I hit the bow and just see what I can.
Yep, here it is, here it is, here it is. Just off the spinnaker pull about 20 feet.
Yep, right here. It's right under the spinnaker.
Off our beam about 5 meters.
Can we just drop the staysail? It'll make it a lot easier to maneuver. It's just a really quick job. Let's get the halyard on the wing.
a line right here.
Yeah,
He's way out there.
Straight out.
Can you see it, Mary?
yeah, it's coming right in.
What do you see it, Steph? Okay, oh, perfect. So it's about, I'd say, 15 meters off the starboard bow. Reach in, gotta reach.
Dive, James.
Oh. And it's all you, Anna. No.
200 yards.
All right, stay. Steady.
Dead center.
Look.
Do I still need 10 points?
I don't think the best use of our time is to come out into the middle of an oceanic gyre and clean it up. I think the best use of our time is to stop letting it out into the ocean.
Yeah, I see something big out there.
After World War II, when we started making all of these single-use plastics, nobody was thinking about the environmental nightmare that might come out of it. They were thinking more about the convenience and sanitation and health. Think about all of the medical equipment that is made out of plastic. So I think now, we need to take a step back.
Right.
This is crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's a little fish guy.
10 feet.
Wow, we're in the big stuff now. While we make light of these old decaying chunks, in actuality, I think we all find it startling that every single trawl from the last 2,000 miles has contained bits of plastic confetti, born from these chunks.
So why did you install the satellite phone inside the locker under the sink?
Well, a lot of people talk shit around here, so I thought it would be appropriate.
That was a good answer.
The offending part, which as we can see has split the whisker.
Nuts. I find it really rewarding to eat cereal while Dale works.
Disgusting, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Hands a day. This design is stupid too.
As we leave the gyre, the sea has begun to change. The color of the water less brilliant blue, more silver gray, as the clouds cross the sun and the waves' crest increasingly rise. Today, a different kind of trawl skimmed the surface with us. Unlike Marx's metallic hydrofoil with the dragon tail of a micro mesh, this massive sieve breathes air and watches us with a deeply curious eye. Its meal, the same as our sample, day after day.
And look at you at the camera.
Me.
All right. So you may see when we drag our trawls across the ocean surface, we come up with maybe 1 teaspoon of plastic for a trawl that's going 2 miles by that much distance. It might not seem like much, but this ocean is vast. Our planet is 2/3 ocean. So that thin strip that we're sieving, that 1 tablespoon, it's less than the edge of a razor blade on a football field. This ocean is vast. If you were to add up all those tablespoons of debris, for those little transects that we trawl, it would add up to tens of thousands of tons of trash, plastic pollution floating in just this 1 gyre alone. And there are 4 more in the world. It's not just this one little island of trash, this mythical island of trash off the coast of California. There are many marine organisms that, from the smallest fish, the smallest jellyfish, the filter-feeding organisms, the zooplankton, are eating these small particles. There's a chemical burden on those small particles of plastic. And those chemicals biomagnify up the food chain into the fish that we harvest to feed the world.
We're getting quite fast, we're going in the right direction, we're doing about 8 knots. We've done the last of Marcus's trawls, and now it's like the repetition of the trawls from 1980, yeah? So we're going to the points on the chart that the guy did before, which pretty much takes us from here straight on in. Obviously, like I said before, we're not there until we're there, and we just need to keep everything together and keep focused and keep safe, because it is getting a bit more bouncy. And just bear in mind as well, with cookies and nice bread and stuff that comes out the oven, that there are 13 people on board. So some people have commented that they went to bed smelling lovely cookies, looking forward to them, and woke up and there was none left. It is a team, and you know.
Sorry. I'll own that one. Maybe we just lock Marcus and before.
There's one thing I'd like to really point out, that the most dangerous part of a voyage is the leaving and arriving. When we're leaving, we had the fishing boat we went to split. There's lots of ships and stuff. Now it's the backwards way. There's going to be ships coming out. There'll be a lot more traffic coming around the Cape. There might be fishing boats, and we're going to be tired and wanting to get in. But it's the most dangerous part of the voyage. So you can really, if you're on watch, looking at stuff. Especially now, we had a ship that's close to us just now. So you've really got to be on watch, everybody.
Yeah, they won't all pop up on here. There'll be local fishing boats and stuff that won't pop up. So
the closer we get, the more dangerous it's going to get. Keep awake in the weir.
I'm reading the book Adrift, and in it he describes the life of a sailor, where when you're out at sea you can't wait to get to port, and when you get to port you can't wait to get back out to sea. And I think it's the same for me.
What I like most about it is the camaraderie and the community that you form at sea. And I'm sort of convinced that somewhere contained in that sort of community is the solution to problems like global garbage in an ocean.
With this bizarre taste of sea life nearly over, I think of our great plastic hunt in the gyre. As frivolous as the hunt may have seemed, I cannot help but think of the responsibility we all share. Whether a wealthy executive or a struggling farmer, our goals become aligned when we have children. Will the research from our last trawl be enough to tell a story that changes their future?
Where I live, we clean the beach all the time. A week later, back again. So what are you going to do? Just keep cleaning it. You can't clean it out the ocean.
For me, it's all about thinking of ourselves as caretakers of the environment rather than destroying it. And it's shocking to me how few people actually think of it that way.
There's many environmental issues right now that are hurting our marine life and hurting our ecosystems, and we can't even point at one environmental issue and say it's the worst, but I think we can try and ameliorate some or all of them to a certain extent.
If there really were an island, we could conceivably go and get it. But having seen what I've seen in 4 oceans, I really don't think cleanup is an option. I think the best we can do is damage control and preventing it from getting worse.
Once you get your liquid beverage,
I was invited on the Sea Dragon to help spread the word with my plastic rep camera to a plasticized world. But what do I say? We saw no immediate consequence. We saw bits. Lots and lots of bits. How does one fathom the significance? Does it take one species after another to fall like dominoes to incite change?
And here's to heading to Cape Town safely and soundly very shortly. Hopefully before it's not Mary's birthday.
For my own part, now that the voyage is finished, I know I still will enjoy takeaway coffees, straws with milkshakes, and with my only choice plastic, I certainly will continue to brush my teeth every day. But after 31 days at sea, consumed by plastic pollution, I do wonder if I'll become that eccentric guy at a cafe, flipping out over a plastic lid. I guess that's what we'll find out when reality hits.
Who's on your watch?
Welcome everybody, welcome to the Two Oceans Aquarium, and a very, very warm and South African Cape Townian welcome to the Five Dyers crew, who arrived here in the very small hours of Thursday morning through very thick fog after quite an arduous trip from what I can gather.
So this journey that we just completed, 4,000 miles plus, was the first of its kind studying plastic pollution in this area. It's only been fairly recently that people have known about this issue, but we're now finding that plastic pollution can be found on virtually every ocean and every coastline in the world.
We drop this trawl in the water, skim the ocean surface for 1 mile, then another 60 miles, then trawl again. Every single one was full of this plastic confetti.
This is the remains of a Laysan albatross. These birds feed their young by regurgitating what they've collected around the world. Plastic bottles, bottle caps, lighters. This is a common snapping turtle that became entrapped in a small plastic ring when she was a baby.
These are pre-production plastic pellets. Over time, they're absorbing all these other chemicals that are washing down our watersheds. Things like oil drops from cars, pesticides, PCBs wash into the sea, and they stick to plastic particles like a sponge.
If we know that fish are ingesting plastics and other marine life are ingesting plastics, as has been reported in the scientific literature, how does it affect them, right? How does it affect their reproduction? Does it cause death? Do they just pass it out without any chemicals? And what we're seeing is that these chemicals do transfer, so how is this affecting their life?
What we're trying to show the world is that this is a global problem. Plastic is washing into our seas from every continent in the world, and it will take international cooperation implemented at a local level to solve this issue.
You have that personal question you have to ask yourself, because now you can't claim ignorance. Do you do something about it, or do you walk away?
The material is tortured into existence in the laboratory using gas coal petroleum as its source. The polymers are strung together through a catalyzing process. Additives are thrown in to tweak the material to its optimum purpose. Finally, we have a material that is strong, durable, flexible, lightweight, and can be shaped to every desire. Colors and varieties mixed together, swept along by the tides of life. It is both good and bad, evil and pure. We project our ignorance and indifference onto the broken, banished goods, putting them out of sight, under the highway, out of the light.
We return to our trodden lives of 9-to-5 survival, with nothing more than a handful of plastic bits. Conscious of the bleakness, the skepticism, and the impossible task of changing our habits, we will only relent to ourselves.
is evil, in my opinion. What I think needs to happen with companies that produce plastic is, in the whole scope of the product's impact, they need to calculate for its environmental impact economically.
Ooh!
This was the Manta, not the high speed, so this is actually a research sample.
It's the sea state coming down, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty calm. It was about a 2 or 3 today.
There's a nurdle!
Yeah.
We have nurdle!
There looks like a piece of some sort of film packaging.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Hard to see against the spoon.
Today I was introduced to a nurdle. It might as well have been a beanbag pellet, only it was a tiny piece of virgin plastic that was found hundreds of miles offshore. Given its seemingly insignificant size, how can Marcus be so dedicated?
I got interested in this topic a long time ago when I was young, just in terms of trash, debris, and plastic. And then as I got into my undergraduate and I was living in a coastal community, I started reading up about marine debris in the ocean, and I stumbled across Algalita, which included Marcus Erickson and Anna Cummins, and I started reading about the issue and got super interested and applied for graduate school. Specifically, what I study is the chemical component, or the toxicity of plastic debris.
Erickson and his wife and Five Gyres co-founder, Anna Cummins.
We're gonna head out now, okay? We're all ready to go.
Next step, Africa.
With fresh eyes and different networks, we were brought together, put simply, to help alert the world.
And what we're doing with Five Gyres.
I cannot help from feeling that we are on the edge of losing all that we've become accustomed to. Everything seems so fragile, and yet is constantly taken for granted as we carry on with our busy lives, blinded by the immediate. As a child, I remember our waste management providers giving our family various buckets to sort paper, cardboard, tin, and aluminium, and only the special plastic with the special number stamped on it. Beside the sink,
and with Algalita is simply looking at the distribution of plastic. I mean, we take a manta trawl, we skim the surface of the ocean, we count pieces of plastic in a lab, and we share the results.
The goal for trawling is every 50 nautical miles from now until the time we get to South Africa. In between those times, we'll deploy the high-speed trawl.
It's a relatively new issue, this idea of plastic marine pollution. Any sailor or Navy man who was sailing through the gyre would have seen this plastic in the last maybe 30, 40 years. But it wasn't until Captain Moore came upon this area between Hawaii and California full of plastic trash, in an area where sailors don't traditionally go. When you first pull up some of these samples, as you'll see, it may not look like a lot of plastic. You might find less than a handful, sometimes only a few fragments. Sometimes it might take taking these samples back to the lab to see if there's any plastic at all. But what's really interesting to think is, here we are in the middle of nowhere. We're going to be thousands of miles from the nearest landmass, and still we're going to find evidence of our plastic footprint.
And I want to remind everyone that this is our research mission. So I invite you all to embrace what we're up to wholeheartedly, get involved. We need your help to accomplish our mission.
49 to go.
The philosophy that there is a way, that we say we throw something away, that you can create something to be used for a minute that lasts forever,
is where our family's rubbish collected until there was no more counter space. Frustrated with their 4 children's lack of responsibility, my mother would take it to the overflowing buckets in the garage, where she would often forget it. Then finally, my father would get annoyed that his tools were buried and secretly, or not so secretly, would bin the waste so it never actually made our suburban curb for collection. This was our part. As I've grown older, I've become very conscious of our fragile world. But I've never thought of myself as a conservationist, a radical tree hugger, and I've definitely never chased the rogue whaling ship, as I've never been to sea. But somehow, after a couple of drinks in San Francisco with a very passionate friend, I find myself in a humid port in Brazil, about to sail to South Africa as part of the 5 Gyres Institute's expedition through the South Atlantic Gyre, documenting plastic pollution for the first time.
And prepare supper for 1800, and then 1800 to 22 is wash up after supper, and 22 to 02 you can just sit and drink tea. Okay? With regard to watches, if you can be on time, be vigilant, keep the log, which is the logbook we have to write, and stay awake. Steve, if you want to take care of doing the anchor and get a couple of people to help you.
With an overwhelming curiosity, I am now part of this precarious group of inspired strangers, led by scientist Dr. Marcus